Let's give a round of applause again for the EGO Korean drummers. They're part of UC Berkeley, and their mission is to share and enjoy the beauty of Korean traditional drumming, known as Pulmur. In doing so, they hope to spread the awareness of Korean culture in the Bay Area and beyond. So thank you to them. Good afternoon, I'm Kathy Aoyang Turner. It's my honor to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you here today, a celebration for the Immigrant Heritage Wall #2. Today is a day of many emotions: happiness, joy, reflection, sadness, appreciation, and yes, hope. 6 years ago, my family and I visited the Aoyang family village in Dalian, Zhongshan, Guangdong, China. In fact, my 7th cousin once removed Grant Din, whom a lot of you know here, who helped you do the plaques, came with us. While the village had relative prosperity and certainly was modern by even today's standards, I cannot imagine what life would have been like growing up there and what direction my life might have taken. But to the eternal gratitude of their descendants, my grandfather, Aoyang Kam-hin, and his wife, Dr. Faith Sai So Long, had the courage and the desire to establish a new life in a new country, the United States of America. While they were fortunate not to be detained at Angel Island and only to pass through, Angel Island Immigration Station is today a symbol of immigrant journey and the sacrifices that so many people have taken seeking a better life. Last July, at the celebration of Immigrant Heritage Wall #1, over 20 descendants of Aoyang Kam-hin and Faith Sai So Long gathered here for a family reunion. How many of you are here today for a family reunion also? That's wonderful. Congratulations. I know that it was very meaningful for me to have participated in that reunion, and it was really wonderful to have 3 generations of Aoyangs at that reunion. The youngest members are now 5th generation Americans. And now I'm a grandmother of a 2-year-old. And my grandson, who's named Rocco Aoyang Turner Sturm, is somebody I hope to know someday and to understand his birthright. A birthright rich in the tradition of hard work, courage, and sacrifice. A birthright that respects all races and celebrates diversity as a cornerstone of our democracy. And a birthright that respects civic participation and discourse. A birthright that understands that immigration is an important component to the intellectual, social, and economic success of the United States. So thank you for being here today, and we at Angel Island Immigration Station thank you for joining us as we continue to tell the story of Pacific Coast immigration and the importance of immigration in contemporary life. I would like to recognize 2 board members, other board members besides Buck and Henry, who are going to be up here. And that is Jerry Wong. There's Jerry over there. Everybody knows Jerry. And, oh, actually it was Henry was the other one. Henry Durr. But Henry's going to speak later on. Okay, enough about me and my family. I also would like to thank the staff of the Angel Island State Park who did a really magnificent job this year. They did it last year too. But it was a much more manageable crowd of people that we have here today. So thank you to Ben, to Steve, and to the entire staff. Thanks also to Dan Kwan, who designed the wall and designed much of the landscape here. Thank you to Elaine Joe, who designed many of the plaques that are on the wall. We couldn't have done it without her. And I want to thank 2 other staff members of Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation because they were way above beyond the call of duty. And that is Grant Din and Julie Fong. My last thank you is really to all the docents and the volunteers that make this happen here at the immigration station. Without them, we would not be able to tell the story of what's going on and what has gone on at this place of great sadness and detention and trials and tribulations for many of our ancestors. And we would not be able to have the beautiful place that we come here now today to enjoy and to reflect upon our past. Okay. Just a couple of housekeeping things. Some of you I know have already been in room 105 in the barracks, but Roy Chan is there to instruct you and to help you learn more about how you can investigate and research your family roots. So if you're interested in doing that, please join Roy after our program today and he can help you with that. Also, I want to make an announcement that anybody with a yellow wristband who needs to go onto a van, would you please meet down here at the bell and you can get your ride back to Ayala Cove. People with a yellow wristband. Those with a green wristband should meet up at the bathrooms in the back over there. Here's another one. I have 2 tickets for the Tiburon Ferry. So check and see if you still have your tickets to the Tiburon Ferry, because if not, these may be yours, so let me know. And lastly, I have been asked to make an announcement about the California Tan Fran Assembly Center Memorial Committee. They are starting a campaign to recognize people who went through the Tan Fran and were detained at Tan Fran, Japanese Americans. There is a brochure that's under the tent, also up on the other side of the stairway to the barracks. So, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you the president of the board of the Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation, Buck G.
Thank you, Kathy. Sorry, not that short. Okay. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation, I bid you all welcome. Welcome to the Immigration Station here on Angel Island, a National Historic Landmark and the symbol of Pacific immigration. For those of you who've been here before, we hope you're here because you've now added your own voice to those stories we can find on this site, that you've carved out a place on the new wall we have. For those of you who've been here, who have been here for the first time, we hope that you find your day here memorable, educational, and maybe inspirational. We hope you find, whether in the poems in the barracks or the names now engraved in the new wall, your own personal connection to the story of immigrants, their journey to America, and their legacy in America. If we look back just a century ago, back to 1900, America was home to 184,000 Asian immigrants, less than 1/4% of the national population. As recently as 1964, this was only 1/2%. As Judy Young and Eric Lee's book on Angel Island that was published in 2010 they recounted poignant stories from a number of different immigrants from China, Japan, Korea, the Philippines, Russia, Mexico, and even India. But the abolishment of restricted immigration policies in 1965 opened up a new chapter in the immigration story here. In 1960, there was less than 1 million Asian Americans in this country. By 2002, 7 million had immigrated. 1.5 million from the Philippines, another 1.5 million from Vietnam and Southeast Asia, 1 million from China, 1 million from India, and almost 1 million from South Korea. But what ties those 7 million who came here in the last 30 years in the recent past to the 500,000 immigrants processed here through Angel Island. It was dreams. It was American dreams. Dreams that a poor immigrant could start a small business and make enough money, raise a middle-class family, send his kids to Sanford and Cal, like my father did when he had his small Chinese restaurant in Oroville. Or dreams that a descendant's child could go to college and become a lawyer, like Ming Chin, whose grandparents came through Angel Island, has now risen to be Associate Justice of the California Supreme Court. And maybe even dreams from a father, dreams that an immigrant son could one day become President of the United States, maybe like Barack Obama. That's the everlasting meaning of this place, of Angel Island. Like its sister station on Ellis Island, this site is a tangible symbol of the role of immigration and a reminder of the contributions of immigrants to American success. But unlike Ellis Island, this place tells a different story. It reminds us that this country has always had an issue with its new immigrants. So I want to close by thanking everybody for adding your names on the new wall. Those names help remind us what makes Angel Island important to the people who came to this island and the legacy they left to this country. They journeyed across the Pacific to land here, knowing that America did not welcome them, yet they came. In history books, they're nameless, faceless, an anonymous mass of people immigrating to America. But here on this island, on that wall, you only need to look at their names to know who they are, what they did, and what they mean to you, to all of us. For creating a place where the past connects to the present, and for helping us build Angel Island into a national symbol of Pacific immigration, I, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Immigration Station Foundation, thank you. Now, I'd like to welcome one of our important partners, Anita Rodriguez, who is the Marin District Superintendent of California State Parks. Anita?
Thank you, Beth. Welcome on this beautiful day. You can tell it's September here in the Bay Area. For those that are not from the Bay Area, the summertime doesn't feel anything like this in September, so I get very excited about September for the weather. So I would like to welcome everybody for coming here to this beautiful day today. One of the reasons that we have 279 of our California state parks, one of the reasons is because of their statewide significance. And when you think about Angel Island, it definitely has that statewide significance. Not only is it statewide or nationwide, but of course it's worldwide. And here as we sit and stand here at the immigration station, it really does talk about worldwide significant issues dealing with immigration. It's an honor to be here with everybody here, standing here with your families and all the connections that you have here at Angel Island at the immigration station. How many of you actually have a plaque over here on our, what I'm going to call the donor wall? Very good, thank you so much. And I touched on saying that that I called it a donor wall, but really it is a lot more than a donor wall. You've probably gone into museums and libraries and some other places and seen, you know, these folks that have donated to make whatever that facility happen and their contributions. But when we first started talking about this wall and what that would look like and how Dan Kwan designed it, it really became a lot more than just a, quote, donor wall. It really does tell the story, like Kathy and Buck mentioned, about what happened here at Angel Island at the immigration station and some of those personal stories. And typically, when we have these, quote, donor walls in our state parks, we do have them for a certain period of time. However, because this wall and the second wall have become so important in telling the story of the immigration story, this really is actually part of the landscape here in telling the story. So for me, it's not just the donor wall that we're going to simply make go away in a certain period of time, and that it will continue to tell stories. As I've come here throughout the years since we've donated the first the first wall, dedicated the first wall, I've seen families come over and enjoy the stories that have been told on the plaques. I have personally led a few tours through the station, and of course one of the stops that we make is at the wall. And so again, for me, it really becomes part of how we tell the story and how we actually have the wall as part of the whole landscape and part of the station itself. As Beck and Kathy mentioned, this whole area is more than just a place in time. Some of our parks do tell a place in time, but sometimes it's really hard to have that connection. Here at Angel Island, there's many connections, from our military history to, of course, our immigration history. And it's very exciting for me when I see the gathering of people here today with their families taking pictures and really being able to say, this is my connection and this is how I got here, and this is how I've been able to be part of America. My own history in terms of immigration, I have two sides of my family. One side that came through Ellis Island from the European end, from Hungary and Austria, and the other part of my family actually crossed the border at Mexico. So I have kind of two diverse ends of how I actually came to be. And so as we think about immigration and the issues about immigration, as been mentioned before, we really need to think about the sensitivity of diversity and where we need to put that in terms of priority and how we treat all of that. So I'm really happy that we're able to have our immigration station that really can tell the story and all of the issues surrounding immigration. What's next here at this section of our park, up here up on the hill, as you know, we have our hospital, and for those that don't know, it's our next big project that the foundation has taken under their wings. And we've had some grants, we've had private donations, and so hopefully we're going to get that next phase done. We've got it stabilized, it's coming along, it's made a huge change over the last year. And next is the really exciting part about the icing on the cake, which all the fun exhibits and all the things, once again, to tell the story about the hospital aspect of the immigration station. So stay tuned for that. And if you want to be part of that, you can talk to Buck G and some of his staff there at the foundation and how you can help continue to make that phase successful. So once again, I want to thank everybody for being here on such another significant day. The stories that have been told on the wall is just so fabulous to me, and every time I go read the various stories and all, it's very, very telling on our community support for not only Angel Island State Park, but for this particular place on the island. Thank you.
Now we're going to have remembrances from three people whose ancestors were associated with Angel Island. And they have different stories to tell, but I think you will find all three of them very compelling. The first one is Cheryl Ann Park from Anaheim. Cheryl Ann is the granddaughter of Sosie Anna Im. She went through Angel Island as an immigrant in 1914, and of Kyung So Park, who was a U.S. immigrant in 1904. Cheryl Ann.
Thank you. Good afternoon. In July of last year, someone in my very large extended family discovered on YouTube the Angel Island virtual tour by Dan Kwan. This spread like wildfire through the Park family with a message to pay close attention at the 6-minute mark. This is when Dan Kwan stands in the women's quarters in front of a large photo banner cropped from a family picture we all knew, one of my grandmother and two of my aunts taken here on Angel Island in 1914. So allow me to introduce myself. My name is Cheryl Ann Park. I am the proud granddaughter of Sosie Anna Im. If you would like to see what my grandmother looked like, there's an absolutely beautiful picture of her, though I may be biased, of my grandmother and two of my aunts in that building behind us. I am honored to speak as Anna Im's granddaughter at this dedication ceremony. Once I saw the YouTube video, I knew I had to come to Angel Island, and if possible, to bring my 3 children and my elderly father. Fortunately, I already had plans to come to the Bay Area with my family for my niece's wedding to take place a couple of weeks after discovering the video. My sister contacted Peter Ostrowski, a park ranger tour guide. Peter was most helpful in suggesting tour guide schedules and ferry schedules. Because of the wedding reception, there were a lot of us in town. Several were able to find time for the tour. Myself, my 3 children, 2 nephews visiting from Hawaii, my parents, and my sister. When we met Peter in person, he seemed so excited to meet relatives of the women in the photo banner. We told him that in the full photo, there was a woman in the background kind of peeking in at us. We always wondered who she was and why she was in the picture. Peter said he knew who she was, Catherine Maurer, the angel of Angel Island, and would tell us about her if we would tell him about our relatives, as all they knew was their names and their intended destination. We expected a 1-hour tour. Peter showed us every nook and cranny for about 2 hours, which gave us plenty of time for us to tell him the tale of our grandparents. My grandfather, Kyung-Sung Park, a widower, left Korea for Hawaii in 1904, leaving his daughter and son in the care of a relative. He was looking for a better life than he had, a better life for his children. He worked on sugar plantations, but decided to leave Hawaii in part because of centipedes. I was actually told my grandfather did not want to raise his children where there were centipedes and other dangerous animals. I thought this was an odd explanation until I was older and found out that in non-California centipedes can be quite large and poisonous. Plus, in Korean folktales, the centipede is usually the villain, sort of like the big bad wolf in European folktales. So as soon as he could, my grandfather moved to the mainland, returning to Korea around 1910 to marry my grandmother, a widow with a son. By 1914, he had enough money to send for his family, which now included a 3-year-old whom he had yet to meet, my Auntie Rose. My own father, Johann Park, was born 2 years later in Idaho. 7 children in total were born here in America. They farmed in Idaho and then in Oregon, and worked hard to establish themselves. There were occasional hard times, but they thrived. Some of the children stayed in Idaho and Oregon. Some moved to other states. My father followed his sister Rose to California. As I mentioned before, we got a special tour by Peter Ostrowski. It was fabulous. Of course, we spent an inordinate amount of time in the women's quarters taking way too many pictures. Most were of my 95-year-old father, posed next to the life-size photo of his mother. My father was just 9 when his mother died of complications for childbirth. I don't know of any photos of him with his mother. This was the next best thing. Peter was very patient, as was the young couple who just happened to take the tour with us. It was an utterly wonderful day. It was incredible to stand in the same buildings my grandmother did when she first arrived in this country. As I stared at her photo, I tried to imagine what she felt. The sadness at leaving her homeland, the excitement and uncertainty of a new life in the country so different from all she knew. A few years ago, we gathered for a family reunion and celebration of our 100th anniversary, a century here in America. Descendants of 7 of my grandfather's 10 children were there. Nearly 100 of us from all over the United States, from all sorts of professions, from all walks of life. We needed to wear name tags and t-shirts color-coded to our generation. In the middle of it, I thought to myself, if my grandparents could just see us now, if they could see what they had started, I'm sure they would be so proud. This memorial wall gives me the opportunity to honor them for having the courage to leave everything that was familiar to them and start anew in a country that was at times less than welcoming. As one of their many descendants, all I can say is that was worth it. Thank you.
And now it's my honor to introduce Ruthie Holland from Chico. She's the grandniece of Catherine Maurer, who Cheryl Ann talked about. Catherine Maurer was known as the Angel of Angel Island, and she helped Angel Island immigrants from 1912 until 1940 when the immigration station closed. Ruthie?
Grant, right there, managing the microphone. I give you thanks for this wonderful privilege that's mine today. It just all began with a phone call to you. asking about the plaques in the wall today. And it's such an honor to be here today and to represent my great aunt. My mom, who through the years, being the niece, placed many materials here at the Angel Island Association beginning years ago. And then she continued to place materials in the State Library of Sacramento. And then she placed materials in the archives of the Methodist Episcopal Church across the United States. For my great aunt's meager salary was provided through, number one, the United States government, number two, the Daughters of American Revolution, and number three, the Methodist Episcopal Church. But I did want to begin by saying also that my mom, when she was 87, it appeared that we were losing her. And family gathered in Chico at the hospital there. And I was down on my knees looking directly at my mom's little head. And she said, "Take care of my files. They are my testimony to the world." "I will, Mom," I cried. And then again, "Take care of my files. They are my testimony to the world." "Mom, I promise," as the tears flowed more. "Take care of my files. They are my testimony to the world." And it just went on and on. Those were her words only. And so I have her files. And my children who are in the audience, when I'm 87, I will be saying the same thing. Take care of my files. They are my testimony to the world. Well, my great aunt was born in Ontario, Canada, and she herself would become an immigrant to the United States. She was one of 11 children, the youngest. When she was a teenager, she went to a youth convention, and it was at that convention that she felt compelled in her soul by God to become a deaconess. And that was a big thing. And so when she graduated from high school, she entered the United States, and she began attending a church college in Illinois. But during that freshman year, she got word that her mother had died. So she went back to Ontario, Canada, and she continued to stay there until her father died 7 years later. So her dream was postponed that long. And in that year, 1911, she came to the United States again to pursue her dream and what she felt was her calling. And she entered San Francisco here, where there was a National Deaconess Training School. I doubt that it exists today. But she got her year's training, and she graduated with her diploma. And there was such a need beginning on the island here as immigrants were pouring in. My great aunt would connect with 12,000 to 15,000, history says, through 1 year. And so she began her work here. She was one of the graduates that got placed on the island here for all the needs of the women, but there's stories of men too. And so I always remember being a youth, my great aunt was always in this priestly looking attire, and it was black dress starting at her neck and flowing all the way to the ground. And then she had this black cape that she always wore around her because of the severe weather as she greeted immigrants arriving here on the island. And then the cape was connected with 2 big white bows, and then she had white cuffs. And the head had a black bonnet on it. I don't remember her in a house dress. I don't remember her in pants and top. And I just remember her, even after she retired, I remember her in her black, priestly looking attire. things that my great aunt did on the island here provided for many needs. She probably, for all of your ancestors that have gone ahead of you, she probably was one of the few hopes here on the island. She would buy toothpaste. Oh, I first must say, she would go from the mainland, where she had an apartment in San Francisco, and she would ride a ferry to the island here and begin her day. And then at the end of her long days, filling many needs, then she would go back to, by ferry to the mainland. Next day, she'd do the same thing again, ride on the ferry. Some of the many needs that she did was she would speak to many church groups, no particular denomination, even though, as I said, 1/3 of her salary was provided by the Methodist Episcopal Church. And then the United States government, I think I might be repeating myself here, no, and then the Daughters of American Revolution. So that's how her meager salary was provided for her. Okay, so she would buy toothpaste. There was a famous violinist detained here on the island, and one of his strings of his violin broke. So she made sure she got a replacement for that. She dictated letters. She translated them in English for many of your immigrant loved ones that were held here. She prepared them for court. She taught them English over and over. In fact, at the beginning of her placement here, she asked the United States government for 2 rooms, one for a library and the other for an office. Because during the course of her years on the island here, she would set up patriotic programs so the detainees that were held would learn about the United States in which they were entering. And she would set up Christmas programs, and through women's groups all over that she spoke to on the mainland, she made sure that every detainee had a few gifts given to them every Christmas in grocery carts that would be moved through where the programs were held. I just learned, being up in the immigration building before the program began, that she made certain that sanitary needs were changed for the women as well as the men. She made sure that fire protection was changed on this immigration part of the island. She was a social worker in a way for all of the needs. And I have some little quotes here that I wanted to share with you. I just can find them a second here. There we go. Well, first of all, she was called some different names. She was called the Angel of Angel Island. And as I talked with many of you administrators this morning and docents, it was so incredible to hear that her name is used over and over and over daily and throughout the week as the Angel of Angel Island. She was called Kuan Yin, Goddess of Mercy, Missy Missy Malo, Mama, and it probably could have gone on and on. Now then, as the Japanese war brides, picture brides arrived, she would help them find their husband-to-be. She would assist in court proceedings. One Japanese detainee boy wanted to postpone his hearing because he felt he wasn't ready to pass the verbal tests that he had to go through with the officials. And my great aunt said, now, you need to keep that appointment. If you change it and postpone, that will not be to your favor. You go, you answer the questions, but don't give them any more information than they absolutely ask for. She was so on their side. I could go on and on and on with the research that unfolded as I studied. She would provide clothing through the women's organizations to whom she spoke. She would teach skills, woodworking, sewing, knitting. And then when many of them passed their citizenship test, she would help find employment for them on the mainland. As time went on, there was a fire, as you're probably aware, in the immigration station here, and it destroyed a good bit of it. And that was in 1940. But although information here on the island indicates that that is when her time of service ended, it was not so. She retired after 40 years and 3 months of service because the detainees who had not passed their tests were transferred to San Francisco 801 Silver Avenue, and they were held there. And then the administration offices, the few that there were, those were also transferred to the same address. And from there, she continued her service. In the year 1951, after 40 years and 3 months of service, she continued to serve those who had passed their citizenship. She would keep her apartment open. I remember that apartment so well. She would keep it open to women who needed counsel, comfort, who needed help with their English, needed help with any services at all. One Korean gal that had passed her test said, "Catherine Mallory's apartment is a place of national love." The Chinese, I have just a few more fun little examples. The Chinese women here that were detained, my Aunt Catherine discovered they loved dolls. One day, the little Chinese girl came to my Aunt Catherine with 30 cents. And she says, "Mama, buy doll for Wang Shi. She too muchy heap cry." And so my great aunt made sure that a doll was purchased for Wang Shi, who was crying too much. When my great aunt helped a Russian woman who had been crying all morning because she could not find her husband, my great aunt saw that a parole hearing was set up, and the lady was told, "You find employment here on the mainland, and then you make efforts to find your husband after that." And finally, a great retirement was held for my great aunt. Pictures show that it was held on this island, maybe on the same grass. I don't remember attending that as a young girl. But finally, I close by saying my great aunt was returning one day from serving here on the island, and she was on the ferry, and a visitor was, a passenger of the ferry was sitting next to her and questioned, "Well, just what is it that you do on the island?" So my great aunt described a day in her life on the island, and the lady responded, "Oh, you are the one person who gives love to the detainees." And at the end of each day, my great aunt would look up at Mount Davidson, where stood the cross, and she would say, "The cross, it standeth fast. Hallelujah." The next day, she would say the same thing. I thank you for this privilege, and all the many employees of the park as well for allowing me to stand here today. Thank you.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Betty Diamond Jew Dickard. Betty is from Collier, Tennessee. She's the daughter of Henry and Edith Jew, who were Angel Island immigrants in 1921 and 1938. Betty?
Grant, and staff, on behalf of Edith and Henry Jew's family, we thank you. My name is Betty Diamond. I am number 5 daughter of 8 siblings. I am delighted to share our parents' journey with you. Gold Mountain, charmed in Southern hospitality. Henry Juman Hay and Edith Ganyanyong, both 14-year-old newlyweds, began their devoted marriage, separated for 17 long, lonely years, but resolute to endure hardship together. In 1921, with Angel Island interrogation behind, Henry imbued by 18-hour workdays, determined to keep his 4 promises to his bride: financially support his household in Hoi Ping, repay his paper sponsor, receive rights to a laborer's return certificate for 2 visits. The first, 9th year, then the next one was the 10th year. Each required a $1,000 collateral deposit. The most important promise, to qualify as merchant of a business, the sword it needed to slay discrimination mandated by the Chinese Exclusion Act. Goodfellows Market, established in Clarksdale, Mississippi, 90 miles south of Memphis, Tennessee, came to fruition in 1933 by networking with wholesale suppliers and merchant relatives in the area. Symbolically, business ownership bridged his precious wife, his daughter, and himself over the vast Pacific Ocean in 1938 to the Mississippi Delta. Together, the family embraced America. Bake, Gold Mountain, Game San. Clarksdale was known as the Golden Buckle in the Cotton Belt, home to a multicultural mixture of Lebanese, Italians, Jewish, and Chinese immigrant merchants, along with African American farm laborers and white plantation owners. Harvard University, Dr. James Lowen states, once slavery was abolished, plantation owners closed their company stores. Goodfellows Market? Well, it simply supplied the demand of the neighborhood. Business? Very good. Steady during the weekdays, but on the weekends, they worked hard with the farm laborers. They were cotton choppers, cotton pickers as they were called, came in droves by the truckload to downtown Clarksdale, packed shoulder to shoulder, streets a-buzzing, buying, jigging as the blues music blared from the juke joints up and down Issaquena and forth. Mom and Dad intuitively seemed to know how to negotiate, naturally how to make people feel welcome, holding their items until they headed home. Business was a-booming. Known for their compassionate, charitable hearts, our parents extended grocery credits, even 100-pound sacks of feed to farmers during the slow-growing season. The community nicknamed them Goodfellow. At the store, my daddy was the prankster, the light-hearted one, making us laugh, spoiling us, the 3 youngest, Helen, Janie, and I, heading to school with burgers in our bellies for breakfast. During our research, we made a wonderful discovery. Our daddy had set an educational landmark. According to the 1941 Fall School Board Minutes, petition of Henry Jew for 7-year-old daughter unanimously accepted to the all-white public schools. Wahoo! Great-granddaughter Marina would have shouted, "Can I have an amen?" had she been there. Future petitions made by Dad also accepted for incoming relatives, sponsored and acclimated to the area. How? Just how did this happen? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Clearly, 2 entrepreneurs, gifted with multiple friendships, coupled with mutual respect, found possibilities evolving into opportunities. Friendship connections in the city school system. The Jew family catered dinner parties for the school superintendent, H.B. Heidelberg, while there, acquainting themselves to prominent community leaders. For example, Ms. Ione Brewer, who happened to be the president of the city school board, also happened to be the wife of our dad's attorney, who represented Dad's business acquisitions about the time of the educational landmark. Sister Megan, the Chinese Shirley Temple of her day, yep, very likely drew the attention of influential guests as the 7-year-old family interpreter. Like my son Jason at that age, flashing that contagious smile, animated, full of life, Megan was the novelty China doll. Faithful Christian friendships at Oakhurst Baptist Church. In Mama's eulogy, Dr. Horton, our pastor, spoke, Henry and Edith, This noble family, chartered members, second largest investors in the building program. He told how Edith surrendered to her Christ in the foreign mission compound, brought to America her life savings invested into government bonds, showing her belief in the government. Sister Gladys, her name honors Gladys and Sam Dubose. These friends transported us kids to church every week, taught Mama English, the Pledge of Allegiance for her naturalization. Mama understood the smiles and treasured the heartfelt kindness from the ladies of the women ministry. In fact, they honored all 7 daughters with bridal showers. Sweet, sweet memories at the Will and Sally McCann plantation, a child's memory, where Miss Sally appointed herself godmother to Sisters May and Jessie, homeschooled Megan, treated the girls to manicures and pedicures, named Brother George after one of their boys. Christmas holidays, sledding with their 3 sons down the snowy hill, accepted like family members in good times and in tragic hours. Faithful friends to the end. Friendships with police officers walking the beat, shopping by the store for conversation and a tasty southern treat. Hoop cheese, sardines and crackers, a Mississippi moon pie, and a cold RC cola. Firmly but non-threatening, they reminded delinquent debtors, take care of business at Goodfellas Market, and reminded us night owls with a quick whoop whoop. The chief of police, Fitzgerald, sold his entire house to our parents, complete with Victorian furniture. Our first house, where Mama finally had a sewing room for the Singer sewing machine. Artistic, creative, she made clothes for the 7 girls and herself. Designed, handmade 2 American wedding gowns. Wow, all without patterns. The backyard, a canopy of Chinese vegetables. The front yard, covered in roses. The coops held chickens, ducks, pigeons, and even a turkey at Thanksgiving. We 3 youngest were the lucky ones to feed the animals and gather the eggs. Not. Mama, the petite fashionista in platform shoes, strong-willed, determined lady of steel, nearing 70, fearlessly defended herself and her store twice in life-threatening robberies, chanced her safety driving the new interstates in Memphis for cherished visits with Julie, her newly adopted Korean grandbaby. Today we count 23 grandchildren, 19 great-grandchildren. Mom and Dad sent all 8 of us to Mississippi universities, 4 at Ole Miss at one time. We are pharmacists, educators, nutritionists, Chinese cooking instructors, media presenter, and author. Amazingly, all without financial assistance. Can you even guess where we 7 girls would be today if we were born in China? Without a doubt, our parents, guided by the Lord, loved us well, trained us well. In collecting these facts and memories to honor our parents, we are profoundly blessed for the opportunity to closely examine Mama and Papa's extraordinary lives. In doing so, we uncovered the cornerstone of their foundation, a living testament of their Christian faith, where Mama was often heard praying or singing Jesus Loves Me in Cantonese. In memory of Henry and Edith Jew, we come bearing gifts from the South. Many moon pies from Clarksdale, Mississippi Chamber of Commerce, which on your way out is at the tent, so please stop by and get your mini moon pie. And this blessing from our hearts to yours. Fa hoi fu kui gain so oi, gok ga nam nui ha vang toi. As a flower reflect the blessing of heaven, may you, male and female, worldwide, reflect a song of praise to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, from whom all blessings flow. Thank you. May God bless you.
Thank you very much, Betty. And we certainly look forward to tasting those moon pies. Hello, I'm Henry Durr, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation. And on behalf of the board, the staff, the California State Parks, and many partners of the foundation, we want to thank you again for coming today to share your stories about your families and what you all have achieved and persevere. In my own case, my mother-in-law, Pansy Dong, was a detainee here at the Angel Island Immigration Station Barracks. She came in 1939 and was held through 1940 for a total of 9 months. She was initially rejected in her petition to remain here, or to remain here in the United States as a daughter of a U.S. citizen. But through perseverance and through testimony provided by relatives, she finally was given permission to stay here in the United States. And in the case of my mother, she came in 1945. And growing up, we always knew her name to be Li Shi Der. But it was not until 40 years later that we children find that for 40 years, my mother's name was not her real name. Before she came to these United States, she assumed the name of my father's first wife, who had passed away. And she did that so that she could establish an older age that would then be aligned and to justify not only the 5 natural children that she had, but several more paper sons and daughters that eventually were either here in the United States or subsequently came to the United States. My wife Priscilla and I, like you, were very privileged last year to have a plaque on the wall to honor our mothers, who, like many, many others, bore the burden of racial discrimination against Chinese and other persons of ethnic background, discrimination that was legalized by our U.S. government. In the opening comments, the superintendent talked about the hospital building that has just been stabilized. And as she mentioned, Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation, as a 501c3 nonprofit tax-exempt organization, has secured funds with our partners to actually renovate inside the building. Bids for the renovation will go out next summer, and then hopefully a year from now, actual renovation of the building will begin. And we hope that by February 2015, there will be a newly renovated hospital building with exhibits, conference rooms, so that more people can enjoy and understand the Angel Island experience. While we have secured these funds to renovate the building so that it can structurally hold these exhibits, program events, and conferences, we will still need to raise funds for renovation finishing costs, such as plastering the interior walls, interior painting, carpets, furnishing, and of course, for the exhibits themselves. The board and the staff will share more information about how you and other friends of the Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation can participate in what will be another fundraising campaign to renovate the hospital building so that it is fully usable. Efforts to reform our nation's broken immigration system remain a hotly debated political issue in the U.S. Congress, state legislative houses across the United States, and local communities. Although Angel Island Immigration Station no longer exists as a detention facility, on any given day in the U.S. today, more than 32,000 immigrants are detained in public and private for-profit prisons. This week, the Department of Homeland Security's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, known as ICE, reported that in 2011, it had detained an all-time high record of 429,247 immigrants, more than the total population of the city of Oakland. Why is ICE detaining hundreds of thousands of immigrants every year. Who are these immigrants? What are their claims? Why have some immigrants been detained today for more than 1 year and even longer? What have been the effects of this detention on their physical and mental well-being and on their families? How have immigration detention conditions changed or not changed since the days of the Angel Island Immigration Station? The Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation, in partnership with the California Parks and other partners, remains very committed to raise funds for the renovation of that hospital building, so that members of the public and community groups have both the physical and programmed space to reflect, explore, and debate the purpose and role of immigration detention today in these United States.